Let's talk about how our churches can manage and prioritize our community partnerships better right now on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and A.J. Mathieu.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, A.J. Mathieu.
Yes, you are.
Indeed, I am. Today, we're talking about community partnerships. We got a question in the listener questions. Well, listen, we deliver on this podcast. We promised you that we'd be getting to these listener questions, and we're continuing to work through them. We have so many.
We promised you not to think for ourselves for quite a while.
Yeah, we were like, great, you gave us content for a long time. And this comes from yet another listener question. Essentially, the question was like, how should we treat our relationship? I'm paraphrasing. How should a church treat its relationship to community partners like the Boy Scouts or, maybe fill in the blank, some other community partner, people who use your building, but they aren't a ministry of your church directly. And so we had a little chit-chat, production meeting, you might call it, and put this together into maybe a slightly broader topic that hits more bases on just how can we manage community partnerships in general, and what is the relationship between those things and your discipleship pathway. So we're going to be digging into that today.
Yeah. I guess we're actually going to talk not even necessarily your building. I mean, partnerships out in the community even. And we haven't even used the word outreach in this, but this is kind of also what we're talking about. If you're confused on terminology or something, we're talking about outreach partnerships. There's various terms that we might use in the church, but external ministries, what's that relationship look like? Yeah.
So if you would like to know more about building a discipleship pathway and what does that look like, you might want to go to the Healthy Churches Toolkit and go to healthychurchestoolkit.com. Try it free for 7 days. Look into all of the resources and training that exists there on building a discipleship pathway. So that'd be something you might want to do.
Any of the discipleship pathways your church would end up creating, if you're working with a Malphurs Group guide, would result in an outreach step. And that's where we are today. So if we wanted to, put this into where in strategic envisioning would this episode fit, this is in an outreach step of your discipleship pathway in your healthy church.
I suppose you could have, not to get too granular here at the beginning before we even dive into the key points, but I suppose you could have some partnerships, parachurch ministry partnerships that might not be connected to the outreach step, but to something else. In fact, one of the examples in the question was like community Bible study. Community Bible study is something that's often run, like community Bible study, the brand is a thing, and that's not necessarily an outreach thing. Awana is kind of outreach, not really.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily just outreach, but it's most commonly. Outreach.
Yeah. I guess all those might still be sort of outreach oriented, but that would be more of like a growth step type engagement.
Yeah. So it just depends. But We're going to give you some key principles you can apply regardless of where it fits in your pathway.
So we're going to start off, we want to talk about a couple of categories. Really, we have sort of 3 categories that we're breaking this down into: primary ministry, secondary ministry, and then more of a, what are we calling the third one, Scott?
Like a good neighbor partnership.
Good neighbor partnership. That's a good term. I like that. But I guess maybe we need to set a little bit more groundwork on a mission vision alignment first, even. Should we touch on that first, or should we just explore that as we go through the 3 types of partnerships?
Let's
figure out the podcast as we go. As we go?
I guess the first thing you want to do, the point of this first point is to say, before you can decide what you need to do with a community partnership, you need to figure out, where does it fit? Is it a primary ministry partnership? Is it a secondary ministry partnership, or is this a partnership we have because we want to be good neighbors? Is this a good neighbor partnership? And so and mission and vision alignment obviously are critical in making that determination, because you have to know where is it that we are going? Who is it that we are called to reach or to focus on? Let me give you a good example, AJ. A church that I worked with that's a suburb of a major metropolitan city. One of the ministries they supported was like a homeless ministry in the inner city of the major metropolitan area where they were at. And that was it's a good thing to support ministry to homeless people, but it was 35, 40 minutes away from where their church was, and they were neglecting their neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And so you might say, well, maybe this should be a good neighbor partnership, a good thing that's happening, and we want to support this ministry, but it's not a primary partnership because we need to reach our neighborhood first. We're first to Jerusalem, and then Judea and Samaria, and then the ends of the earth. And so just having that thoughtfulness around who are we called to reach, what is our responsibility, what is our vision, can maybe help you sort it. But as we move through the points, AJ, we're going to talk about, well, if we call it a primary ministry partnership, what does that mean? If it's a secondary ministry partnership, what does that mean? And if it's a good neighbor partnership, what does that mean? Does that sufficiently answer what you were saying?
Maybe, maybe not. Let's dive into primary ministry partnerships.
Correct me along the way. This
will come together as we go. A primary ministry partnership would be this, I guess, what you were just explaining, Scott. A primary ministry partnership is going to have a lot of very significant alignment with mission and vision in the church. So, and let me get even, I guess, more specific with you, because it is our theological belief that the mission given to all of the churches that call Jesus Lord is the Great Commission, that we are to be about making disciples of Jesus, evangelism, and growing them in maturity, edification, or discipleship, if you want to use that term for that. But increasing in maturity, life transformation. So a primary ministry, as it relates to a community partnership or an outreach ministry of the church, would have a direct connection to one or both of those elements of the Great Commission. Now, the vision in a church will also be rooted in the mission of the church, but also be more specific or more culturally contextualized to where your church is. What your demography is, and your location, and just various things. Why does God have your church there? What is he calling your church to do based on your address? And so a primary ministry, as it relates to a community partnership, is going to have really close alignment between one or hopefully both of those elements of the church, mission and vision. And so we just need to begin looking at that then. So if we're going to have mission alignment with a primary community partnership, it's probably going to have an evangelistic component to it. Otherwise, it would be maybe more tertiary, secondary, as we're going to call it. So a good primary ministry might be, maybe if we're talking like an external connection, a nonprofit ministry that is definitely like gospel oriented. And this could be a homeless thing. It could be a food bank. It could be some other activity that is very centered on making sure that the gospel is presented to the constituency that is engaged in that ministry. That might be a great primary ministry partnership for your church, because you're like, hey, we care about sharing the gospel. They're doing this really cool work over here, and they're sharing the gospel. Let's invest in them with people and money and maybe space. Maybe they need location. So that's how we are beginning to talk about primary ministry in partnerships.
Yeah, I would go a step further and say, when we talk about primary and secondary ministries, we are talking about things, when something's primary, we expect everyone to participate or to be connected to this in some way. And so, for example, you might have a service Sunday type thing where everybody's going to go out and serve in community. You wouldn't necessarily send everybody to the same community partner, because that might be they might not have enough volunteer needs, but a primary partner might be someone that you like, you're trying to direct people in that direction. You're going to go, this is someone that we want to support. Or the Alpha program, that would be an example. That's a primary thing. It's a key entrance point for people into our church is through Alpha, and differentiating that from something that is more secondary. That I don't know, some Young Life wants to use your building to meet on Friday nights. That'd be great. If the Young Life needs a space and you don't feel threatened by Young Life, but it's not your youth group. Young Life isn't your youth group. You have a youth group, but you're happy to let Young Life use your space. But you're not trying to make sure that every kid at your church is going to Young Life.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the difference, right? So just recognizing that a primary ministry partnership is one you expect your church to be deeply integrated between that ministry and what you're doing, and you're actively promoting it, you're funding it, it's highly visible.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does to me. Let's break it down still a little bit more for our listeners. So, and you've got a good example there of, I think, how to talk about this with the service Sunday. Well, maybe like a fifth Sunday serve day. Like we get out of the church and we go and we participate in our partnerships somewhere. As you said, Scott, maybe we can't all go to the food bank. It only has like, it can serve like 50 people a day or something. And our church of 400 would overwhelm the space. They don't all need us. So our outreach ministries, we have like 8 community partners. And on our fifth Sunday serve day, we're able to distribute our church among these, and people might choose based on, passion, heart, gifting, which one of those they want to be a part of. But from a communication standpoint in the church, it's a primary ministry because we're saying we want all of you engaged on these fifth Sundays. We want the whole church in on this. We're just going to be distributed amongst several partners. So that's how we talk about.
Right, and there may be other ministries that your church is connected to that wouldn't fall into that category. That you'd go, well, that's a good ministry, but like, for example, it might even be a really good thing. Maybe your church supports a jail ministry, but because of the fact that like that's complicated, you usually have to go through the system. You got to get approved. They got to run a background check. There's 18 different hoops. You've chosen not to make that one of your primary partnerships. Maybe that's a secondary partnership, or maybe that's even just a good neighbor one. Like, we want to support the prison ministry. We believe in it, but it's not something that we're going to be actively promoting. We'll support it, but we're not going to fund it we're going to fund it, but we're not going to be driving people in that. So there can be different kinds of things where you'd go, this is good, but it's not right. And maybe the thing that I'm trying to challenge, AJ, is that there's such a flattening, in churches. They'll just have a list of 30 different parachurch ministries that they support, and none of them get much attention because you've not prioritized what is primary, what is secondary, what are those things we're really leaning into. And it's maybe because we feel bad. We feel like, well, they're doing good work. I don't want, by saying they're a good neighbor partner, maybe that diminishes them in some way, but it doesn't diminish what they're doing. It just, you're trying to accentuate what it is that you are doing. Mm-hmm. and what your vision is. And so you can be a good neighbor and it not necessarily be a primary or a secondary. So maybe let's talk a little bit about what does a secondary ministry partnership look like? Because it's kind of in the middle.
Yeah. And I think it can be kind of confusing even when we talk secondary ministries sometimes in the church, like internal things. So with an external partnership, a secondary ministry might still be even a little bit more confusing. Could be something that is more ongoing, or it's not going to be just that fifth Sunday time. We just have this ongoing relationship with this ministry. Or maybe, it is something that meets in our building that would be a good invitational thing for our church to participate in, but not something we think everybody would need. It could be something additional. I guess this could even be like, BSF or something, Scott. Yeah. I mean, it's a great thing. It aligns with our church.
Or MOPS.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's gear towards women. obviously it's called mothers of preschoolers. So
Yeah.
like you're immediately excluding dads. It's not called DOPS.
Yeah.
So that's okay. So it's secondary because it can't apply to everybody, but it's a primary. It's a key, not primary. It is a key entry point that has a specific purpose for getting people plugged into community at your church.
Yeah, right. Yep. So that, I think either one of those could be good examples of a secondary ministry. Both of those would be secondary ministries likely in your church's growth step. If you had a 4-step pathway, this might be either your second or your third step in the pathway where we are building people up, being in fellowship, maybe being in Bible study, in prayer relationships with people. So either one of these examples would be a good secondary ministry for that.
Running the risk of making it even more confusing. You could say the fifth Sunday service day, that is the primary ministry. Like the event is the primary ministry.
Right. In an outreach step. Yeah.
Right. And then we have these community partners, which exist independently sort of as secondary ministries in that, on the primary ministry event, the service day, you're going and serving at the food bank. And then as a secondary ministry, you could be plugged into the food bank once a month.
Right.
And we wouldn't expect everyone to do that, but we would invite you to, that would be a good thing for you to do. And we're going to encourage it and to create, on-ramps for that. But it's not an expectation that we have for everybody. So the expectation we have for everybody is the fifth Sunday service event, that you would be engaged with a community partner on that day. And then the individual community partners could exist as on their own as like ongoing volunteer opportunities. So in that sense, you're going, it's primary and it's secondary. No. The event is what's primary. And then the ongoing sort of volunteering in those ministries is the secondary thing. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does to me. If you have questions, if you're listening and you have questions, you can email us leadership@malphursgroup.com and we can walk through this. You know what? Honestly, I mean, not to be funny.
Like the meme from, is it Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where I'm like pointing at, like he's pointing at the chart. You know what I'm talking about?
No, but it also does remind me though of the comic, trying to explain what our mission is. And there's like lines going all over the place. This episode sounds like, thanks for making discipleship pathway and outreach super complicated.
You're like, oh my gosh, this is awful. Yeah.
How much we can explain this more clearly in your context. If you'd like to meet with us, email leadership.
It's just so much easier to talk about a concrete example than it is to talk about it in the abstract.
Yeah, that's true.
When we're working with your church, we're dealing with an actual thing and going, okay, what role does this thing play? Yeah. Not talking about it at a theoretical level, which is sometimes more confusing.
This seemed like a good idea an hour ago.
Yeah,
all right. The last piece we're talking about is good neighbor partnerships, which is a little bit more to what the person that submitted the question was kind of asking about. Yeah. And this is more so in the space of not exclusively, but maybe use of your building, a ministry that is using your building. And there's a couple of natural examples we could talk about in this. I mean, you mentioned Scott, Awana or Alpha. That's a little more internalized.
Well, usually those have to be staffed by your people.
Yeah. Let's talk, Boy Scouts or Trail Life or Girl Scouts or one of these, some national, it could be local organization.
An AA meeting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like those kinds, sometimes even Celebrate Recovery sometimes, but usually that's led by someone in the church. But
yeah, you can internalize that more or re-engage. Those are a little bit more kind of hybrid or internalized. But so something like, we talked, pre on the air about Boy Scouts or Trail Life. I mean, this is a kind of a classic thing. Lots of churches have Boy Scout troops that meet in there. It's just one of the places that the Boy Scouts would commonly go to. So external organization needs a place. You could offer that up free, maybe for income, whatever you want. But I guess the question is, what is the relationship then between the church and the Boy Scouts or Trail Life. If you don't know what Trail Life is, I'm going to promote Trail Life because Trail Life USA is a Christian.
They're one of our, and today's episode is sponsored by Trail Life.
They're not. I used to be a leader in Trail Life when my sons were in their junior high and high school era. And it's just a Christian scouting organization. It is an alternative to Boy Scouts of America, to be perfectly honest.
They don't even call it the Boy Scouts of America anymore, I don't think.
It's true. They're called Scouts.
Is it Scouting America?
Scouting America, something like that. There are reasons that churches may not want to partner with Scouting America anymore for theological differences. And which is that's another criteria. I mean, your church needs to consider, what is this organization? Do they align with us in our theology, in our mission, in our vision, in our beliefs? Because regardless of how much you think it's a partnership, even if you're like, hey, we're just letting them use our building, somebody may question that and you go, well, why would we choose to open up our building to this? You need to have an answer for that. So we have to consider these things with our partnerships. Getting more to the listener's question, what does this look like? How do we promote it? It's really your choice. You could not say anything about it. I mean, it could be something that happens on a Tuesday night. There's nothing else happening at your church on Tuesday night. Nobody might even notice that there was something happening. It really could be that basic. Like, we've never even mentioned it. It could maybe make it into an announcement that we will start having this organization meet on Tuesday nights, and then you never talk about it again. It really can escalate up to the point in which you're like, we are really into this. In my experience, the local church that hosted our Trail Life troop, they really took it kind of as far as you could in a partnership. They saw it as an internal ministry. The elders of the church, had sort of the major oversight of it. There was leaders in place, and there's a legal structure even for Trail Life at the local level. But the church had oversight of it. They were aware of the messaging. They funded it. They provided, we used the church vans to go on camping trips. And they were as engaged, I think, as you could with a community partner in that respect. So I think
probably was more of like a secondary partnership then.
Yeah, it really was. It was really was a secondary ministry for them. So
I'm going to go a step further than you, AJ.
Oh,
I'm going to go a step further.
Take it up a notch.
Yeah. I'm going to say if it's a good neighbor partnership, if it's not a secondary ministry for you, and it's not a primary ministry for you, then you should talk about it as little as possible. You may choose to fund it or not fund it. Like, you may just put it as if you've got a missions budget and you think they're doing good work, but we're not going to be doing a lot with it. And so we have, 2 or 3% of our budget that we can put towards good things that we're not going to be really involved in, then by all means, feel free to do that. But generally speaking, I would say limit it to just the use of your property and, things that you can do low effort support. And, obviously, you're not trying to hide these partnerships. So definitely put it on the calendar so people know, hey, Trail Life is meeting in this room. But you really run the risk of mission creep and sort of discipleship pathway erosion when you start flooding these good neighbor partnerships with a lot of attention and funding. And so I would really discourage it. If you're going to let Trail Life use your building, but it's not a secondary ministry or a primary ministry, I wouldn't be advertising it. Because anything that I'm not trying to say that advertisement is a zero-sum game. It's not. But people do have limited attention spans. And anytime you shine a spotlight on one thing, you're choosing to put something else into the shadows. And so you should be thoughtful about that. Is this a community partnership? It is not a reflection of whether or not the work they're doing is good. That's not the question. Is this, going back to your original question, I guess, AJ, is this in alignment with our vision? Is this something that we want to actively promote and really put a spotlight on? And if it's not, then it's okay to simply be a good neighbor. Sure, you're welcome to use our space. We're happy to let you borrow our vans. We're happy to do that, but we're not going to be funding you. We're not going to be promoting you. We're not going to be driving, families to sign up for your particular thing. Like that's not what we're doing, but you're certainly welcome to use our facility and we want to be a good neighbor to you. So that would be me. So I don't know. You do you make your own decisions, but I have found for the most part, these things tend to just add to discipleship pathway creep, where people just the erosion.
That's a valid risk that you've brought up. And we always would encourage a church to have a communication plan so that you're able to kind of, the right questions to ask when these things come up, or if somebody has an idea, maybe someone in your church is a leader in Trail Life and they're like, hey, can we mention this Sunday? If you have a communication plan already and you know how you've categorized this relationship, this partnership, then the communication plan becomes your scapegoat when you don't want to promote it. You're like, no, I'm sorry, that's not part of what we do because, here's why. Here's how we make decisions about what we promote. So, I guess I would sort of say the same thing as you, Scott. You choose how you want to do this, but choose on the front end, develop a system and a plan on the front end for defining these relationships and how you discuss them, how you promote them, before you end up in that position where you have to make some, on the fly judgment call on whether we do something, because you do run the risk then of other things saying, well, setting a precedent, I guess is what we're saying. How are we going to handle the next one?
Yep. So to try and tidy up this as cleanly as I possibly can, I'll summarize this way. Community partnerships are good. They're really good. But you need to have a plan for them and you need to categorize them. Is this something primary that we really want everybody in our church connected to? Is it secondary? It's something that is good and edifying. It's sort of a step beyond, or a deeper level of engagement or a way we express part of our vision. And so we're going to be actively encouraging people to engage with this community partner. I would encourage you to keep that number of things small. Or is this a partnership that they're doing good work and we just want to be a good neighbor? So we're going to let them use our facility and our assets and maybe even, some marginal support financially because we believe in the work that they're doing, but it's not going to be something that we're flooding a ton of attention on because that might detract away from, our broader vision and what we're trying to accomplish in our community and beyond. So have that thoughtfulness and intentionality rather than being pushed and pulled by every person who wants you to announce something for them, which is more than normative behavior, especially in churches that are smaller, because everybody feels like that you owe it to them. And you don't. You have an obligation to lead towards where God is calling you. And just because someone has a passion project doesn't mean you're obligated to promote their thing.
Yep, I agree. That was a good summary. So again, foundationally here, we're really speaking about a segment or a couple of segments within a discipleship pathway. If your church doesn't feel like you really can clearly talk about the ministries of your church and how they work together to fulfill all of the discipleship and evangelistic goals that you have, we'd love to have that conversation with you. HealthyChurchesToolkit.com is a great resource for you to get training on that. If you want more of a space in which you can work on things on your own, or you could certainly speak with us about how we can come alongside you to help you build that in a relatively short period of time and then coach you into really implementing it well. We'd love to have that conversation. Today's show notes are linked in the video description on YouTube or in your podcast app, if that's where you're hearing the Church Revitalization Podcast. Thanks for being with Scott and myself this week. We'll see you again next time.